She came over from West Africa. Her first job when she got to the States was working at McDonald's. She started sending money back home to support some of the orphans back home from her McDonald's.
Wow.
Then she went to school, got her degree at La Roche, and now she works at Ernst & Young. And she's back in her home country. She's now launched, after like 5 or 6 years, she's launched 2 schools and 2 farming businesses in West Africa.
Wow.
Her vision is amazing.
That's
and there's this
incredible.
young woman, right? They came over to the U.S. with next to nothing. And now she's launching all these businesses halfway around the world.
You're listening to the Real Returns podcast, where we learn how real investments can make a real impact. Join your hosts, Andrew and Dan, as they share stories and interview business leaders on how real estate and other forms of investment can create meaningful change for individuals and communities around the world.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Real Returns podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Reichert. My co-host, Dan Croce's not here today. He usually brings a joke, but I've got a friend, Tim Daigle, here with me today.
I've got one for you, Andrew.
You got a joke?
I got one.
What do you got?
All right. So I've got a sister, and she just set up a new business in Alaska.
Mm-hmm.
And a buddy of mine who was friends with her said, "Hey, where's your sister? And what's her business?" And I said, "Alaska." And he said, "Oh, well, I'll ask her myself."
Alaska. I like it. Alaska, I'll ask her myself. That's good. Dan Croce would appreciate that joke.
I don't know if it was
He's the king of
worse
jokes.
than Dan's or better than Dan's. I'll let the audience decide. on that.
Yeah, we'll ask him. Well, great. Well, I'm so glad you're here, Tim. We've known each other. I was just thinking about it. We've known each other for a long time.
Yeah.
Probably about a decade at this point. And, coming from the consulting world into what you're doing today with impact investing has been just such a fun journey to watch you. And you were on staff at the church where we both attend for a little while as well. Can you just talk a little bit about your journey and your background and what you're doing now?
Yeah. I started in big consulting, right? Working at Arthur Andersen and Accenture as a partner there for a number of years. Then went on and worked for some other big global tech firms like Dell, and then launched my own company. It was neat. I was talking to Pastor Ed Glover, and I was kind of in transitions, and Ed came over. He said, "Tim, I'll give you 3 bits of advice. Pray about these things." Number 1 was, when you dream, what do you dream about? Number 2 was, what's a passion that's been burning in your soul for years?
Mm-hmm.
And number 3 was, what makes you sing?
Oh,
And when I went through those things, it was like, the dream was, I'm one of 9, but I've got 3 brothers. And my dad and my 3 brothers all had their own businesses.
You're one of 9?
Yeah, I'm one of 9.
Wow.
Right.
You survived.
And so I come from a family of entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
But I always worked in big corporate, but a partnership was kind of entrepreneur. But so one, it was, I wanted to start my own business. A passion was cloud computing and technology. And 3, what makes me sing? And that was riding my bike. And I wanted to race my bike, and I never got to. But so putting those all together, I started my own consulting company here in Pittsburgh, and I could race my bike Tuesday nights up at the Oval in Park.
Nice.
So that was a blast. So anyway, I did that for a couple of years, had a great run. The church did ask me to come on staff as a young adult pastor. That was a lot of fun.
And you're pretty much a young adult, right?
Well, I raised 4 young adults.
That's right. You know a thing or two.
They were all in their 20s at the time. So
Yeah.
I related
some
well
experience.
to that group, right? Yeah. But then I really felt called out of that and back into business, because when I was working with the young adults, the thing I was helping them most with were business plans.
Yeah.
They weren't coming to me with boyfriend, girlfriend issues. It was like, "Tim, I'm thinking this. What do you think?" And I'm like, all right, I think my calling's really back in business and really helping entrepreneurs and investors think through. And with this topic on impact investing, which you guys hit so well, that's really what we're doing. From an investment side, impact investing is still new, and I am about this deep in it, and I'm learning every day.
Yeah.
So,
It's a big world there. There's a lot to learn. And, what you said there, I'm still learning a lot myself as well. And you're in the trenches. I mean, you're working with organizations that are really just grassroots efforts. So can you talk about a couple of those organizations?
So I left church a couple of years ago, relaunched my consulting business.
Working for the church.
Working for the church. Correct. Thank you.
I was going to say, I think I've seen
Still
you around
there every
there.
week. But I reset up a consulting business only because if I want to be working with entrepreneurs, I need to be an entrepreneur. So relaunched my consulting business at part-time. And then I founded the Faith-Driven Network in Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
So Faith-Driven Movement is a kind of a global movement for entrepreneurs and investors around impact investing, and how can entrepreneurs really lean into a vocational calling that God has for them to help redeem the world and help human flourishing.
Okay.
So we're launching that in Pittsburgh. It is, as you said, a lot of grassroots efforts. Some of these are Main Street businesses, right, that aren't going to employ a lot, but they're providing a service to people who need it.
Mm.
Or it could be a big global opportunity. And some of the companies here in Pittsburgh we have are tech startups that are I think going to hit a home run, or at least going to hit a good double, triple.
Yeah, right.
And maybe
Nothing
a home
wrong with
run.
that.
So there's some really neat activities. I don't look at how big the potential is. I really just care about each and every entrepreneur and really helping them lean into their God-given vocational calling that they have.
Yeah, that's amazing. Well, you're doing great work. How did you get into that? Like, how did that particular area of impact investing become?
Well, it was the
passionate
young
to you?
adults, right? They were pushing me this way.
Yeah.
And then I had to start doing research, right? So then because I love doing research.
Yeah.
I'm a geek. So it's like I started looking, and that's when I found the Faith-Driven Investor, Faith-Driven Entrepreneur, and started listening to their podcasts. And it was like getting just some really good ideas and so when they were coming to me with different ideas, I was like, well, have you thought of this? Or go listen to this podcast, and it helped them. So that's really what helped us launch it. And then I just worked with some really good business folks from Pittsburgh, some who were recently retired that had some time and amazing expertise, and they came alongside me to help us get this thing launched. So
Yeah. Well, that's great. It takes a good team to get anything launched, right?
Absolutely.
So it's good that you're
Yes.
surrounding yourself with good people. What do you think's unique about? My sense is that this faith-driven aspect of what you're doing is unique in terms of how you think about impact investing. Lots of folks are thinking about impact investing in terms of environmental impact or social impact. What's unique about the particular work that you're doing?
I think one thing that's unique, Andrew, is there's a lot of good nonprofits that are doing work, right? And there's a lot of businesses, right? Whether it's environmental or whatever. But I think what we're looking at is how do you really come alongside people to help? And the nonprofits have been out there raising money, right? That money seems to be shrinking, right? And a whole different model. So what's unique, I think, is to challenge entrepreneurs and to challenge the nonprofits to think outside the box and see, can you come up with a sustainable model, right? Where you have products and services that can make money, satisfy the need, right? And still come alongside and help people, right? But you're doing it at a fair price or a good price that they can afford, but you're really helping them. And it's sustainable, and you don't have to hit up your same constituents for money every year.
Yeah.
No, you've come up with a sustainable offering that pays for itself, so whoever buys it, right, can really utilize it. So one story we have is even something like the church. So our church here in Pittsburgh is going to be taking over a business called The Nest that has gently used clothing for little peeps is their tagline. And it's a nonprofit business, which is fine. It doesn't have to be a for-profit business. Our goal is to make it sustainable.
Yeah.
Right. That it's not going to be losing, a lot of money every year. That it can be break even.
Yeah. There's
But
commerce
it's still
there.
Absolutely there's commerce, but the people donating the clothes still want a tax deduction or may have the option of a tax deduction. So we'll set up as a nonprofit to do that. But it's going to either make a little money or break even is the game plan for it. So there's little things that churches can do this, right? So our church is thinking forward like that, which is great. So there's different things like that. There's all sorts of businesses out there that are doing well. We've got one of the young adults. I was just blown away by some of the people that I got to interact with.
Yeah.
Right. She came over from West Africa. Her first job when she got to the States was working at McDonald's. She started sending money back home to support some of the orphans back home from her McDonald's.
Wow.
Then she went to school, got her degree at La Roche, and now she works at Ernst & Young. And she's back in her home country. She's now launched, after like 5 or 6 years, she's launched 2 schools and 2 farming businesses in West Africa.
Wow.
one agriculture and one livestock to produce fruits and vegetables for the school, right? And it's all like vertical. And I mean, her vision is amazing.
That's
And there's this
incredible.
young woman, right? They came over the US with next to nothing. And now she's launching all these businesses halfway around the world. Well, she still lives here in Pittsburgh.
That's
So,
amazing.
and so with our network, I'm not here to teach. I'm just here to let people connect with people and tell their story and motivate. And when you hear stories like that, it's like, and then all of a sudden you start getting ideas in your head of, oh, maybe I could do this, or maybe I could do that. Then we just want to encourage people to go for it.
Yeah.
Well, the seeds God's planted in your heart, how can we as a community of people encourage you to lead it?
Yeah.
And for entrepreneurs, we look at 5 things that we can do, especially as maybe more of an impact investor. It's they need leads, they need capital, they need mentoring, they need technology help, especially with SaaS offerings and things that are out there today. And they need discipleship and just kind of spiritual growth, and if they're not spiritual, just loneliness, and they need that component in their lives, right? And for us, it's faith-based. So we're doing that from a faith-based perspective, but we think all entrepreneurs would need that.
Yeah, I mean, entrepreneurship is a lonely business. A lot of
Absolutely.
people don't realize just how lonely it is.
It sounds
And so I
sexy sometimes.
Yeah, it sounds
until
sexy.
you meet them.
Yeah, right, exactly. So I love that you're surrounding people with all of those various components that they need,
Yeah.
leads. And I would like to dig into the capital piece a little bit, if you wouldn't mind, because one of the things I love about the faith-driven investor movement in general is how the term capital equals influence is used a lot, right?
Yeah.
And our capital has influence, and our capital can have impact. It's really about what influence is that having and what impact is that having. So how do you think of that? Either your capital or maybe the capital that's going into these like startups that are coming out of the network. What does that look like?
Well, 5 years ago, it was profits from my investments would go into things, mostly nonprofit,
Mostly donations.
right? As donations, right? But with faith-driven investing, it's really challenging us to say, no, not your profits, your investments themselves. Can they do it?
Yeah.
Right? So that's where we really need, I think, to do impact investing, you need entrepreneurs who are doing the kind of things you want to invest in.
Yeah.
Right? So that's why we want to encourage the entrepreneurs. But we have, from my personal investing now, I've set X percent of our portfolio to be going to entrepreneurial startups.
Yeah.
It's a high risk part of the portfolio,
Yeah, sure.
right? So I'm not going to go 80%.
Yeah.
If so, I may be on welfare someday.
Yeah.
Right. So you have to be smart and you have to learn. And this whole thing is a learning process for me and everybody. It's such a new area.
Yeah. Sure.
Right. I've had a few investments. We're looking at a few more.
Mhm.
One vision that I have, Andrew, is that we would have a fund in Pittsburgh that would do that.
Oh,
Because I don't view myself as an expert enough
yeah.
to look at a business and say, should I invest 10,000, 50,000, whatever the amount
Yeah.
is in this business? Because I don't know the exact number, but I think it's usually around 80 to 90% angel
Go
investments.
belly up.
Go belly up. You lose
Yeah.
everything,
First
right?
couple of years, yeah.
Including the relationship
Right.
that you had and why you went into it.
Right, sure.
And
but
you
then
don't want to do that.
Nobody
right?
wants to do that.
That's
but then there's
horrible.
10 to 20% that make it end up making up for the rest. That's
Yeah.
kind of that's the VC.
And that's when you're trying to hit the home run. But a lot of the ones we're doing are the more Main Street things where we just want to get up, be able to support themselves. My vision, and that would be more of a debt raise than an equity raise.
Okay.
Because it's a single or a small business. They don't need to be giving a whole lot of equity.
Yeah.
I want them to keep the equity, right?
Okay.
So even as we analyze debt versus equity and how we go after it, again, this is all new. We're just going through this. But how do you have patient capital, right, with some of these entrepreneurs where it is maybe a debt instrument, and then let's say next year we do get a recession and they're not in a position to pay. Well, is that okay? And can you be a little patient with your capital and say, hey, for the next 6 months, you keep this business afloat. Do not go under, right? And you worry about me once business turns around. I mean, it's all a lot of different things that just dabbling now with some entrepreneurs,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
To see, and we'll see how it works out, right?
Yeah.
But it's gonna be a lot of learning. But I'm very hopeful that this is gonna be a major way of the future.
Yeah. Specifically like the debt fund concept or more like these startups that are having impact on Main Street. Like what you,
Well, really, I think purely there from an investor standpoint.
yeah.
Right? How do you not just invest in the S&P 500 index, right? Which is
Right.
where a lot of folks my age have a good chunk. And whether it's in the actual index or another fund, it's very similar. So how do you do something really different where you can have a personal impact on it?
Yeah.
Where you can see, no, as an investor, some of this stuff is really doing good. And I feel really good about
Yeah.
it, right?
Yeah. So from a total asset allocation standpoint, I know you said you're not putting 80% of your capital into high risk, high return startups. Let's just say, and I love your analogy. You said, hey, I used to think of this as, okay, I have my income and then whatever, 10% or something I'm donating to nonprofits. But now you're asking yourself the question, what am I doing with 100% of my capital?
Right.
And so if I'm taking that piece of that pie, 100% of the pie, do you still recommend putting some percentage in the S&P and some percentage in alternative investments, some percentage in impact? Like, how do you think?
Well, yeah, absolutely. I think of it in a quadrant, right? So I have upper right, I have a high impact, social or kingdom impact, and high financial return,
Okay.
right? That would be the upper right. Bottom right would be lower impact, but high financial return. The S&P 500 is down there.
Yeah.
I still want a lot there because that then funds the next column, which is lower financial return, right? But it could have a high impact or a low impact. Low impact, low financial. I don't want to do a lot of those, but a high impact, right? So that may be a 1 or 2 or 3% loan that I give to a startup, right? And when I get paid back, I'll just plow that into another one. Since I still have a nice profitable chunk of the portfolio, it's when I look at the whole, I'm still doing well, right?
Love that.
And how can I find, there are now some investment funds and some private equity funds that are really targeting that high return,
Yeah.
right? That's the holy grail if you can get that. There's some trying to do that. I'm dipping my feet into a couple of them.
Yeah.
With private equity, a little more than dipping my feet in.
Yeah.
I'm trying to figure those out.
Sure.
So far, so good, right? But if I can do that, and the better those do, the more I can then start allocating
You do some of the lower
to the impact.
Yeah.
to the
so
lower
high
route,
impact, lower return.
And then I also then now view a loss, right, or charitable on that same. Well, it's now a third quadrant over here of losing, right? But there's some that are high impact and some that are low impact. Again, the low impact, want to eliminate those as much as can. Want to focus on it. So how do you measure whether it's a nonprofit or a for-profit business? How do you measure the impact they're making?
Yeah.
That's a $64,000 question that
For sure.
no one's answered yet. And there's, as you know, there's been a lot of greenwashing on the environmental space.
Yep.
And I think no matter what space it is, there'll be greenwashing of your numbers. So
Yep.
how do you, as an investor, look at it and say, I'm really making a positive impact, that I can feel good when I go to bed, that I feel like I'm doing these things with the resources I trust?
Yeah. And what does that look like for you?
So for us, my goal is 10% on the impact and the lower return, high impact.
10%
Although-
of that quadrant.
In that quadrant, now some of it, I have it pegged as a low return. It may not end up being a low return.
Yeah.
Right? That may end up moving over to
There's
the
maybe
other
some
quadrant,
side there.
but I don't know what's there. But some, especially the debt ones, are, those are low. They're gonna stay low, and that's fine.
Yeah.
But it's part of the overall mix.
What's an example of low return, low impact? Is that like bonds? Like,
Yeah, I mean, there was one where I did, from a real estate standpoint, to help get this real estate company launched. I just went in with a very low, basically funded the first properties to get the business off the ground.
gotcha.
Right. And then it was set up as a mortgage. They paid me more than I had asked and more than I needed. But they were very successful. Now they've got a thriving business.
Yeah.
Right. And so that one started as pure debt with low. it turned into me to be a high impact and high return
Interesting.
because it was making double-digit returns and they were making an impact with their tenants, right? So you're in the real estate business.
Yeah.
I know with Burgo, you really do care about your tenants, and that shows. And to me, that's it, right? So that I try to challenge every business owner and every entrepreneur. How are you impacting your stakeholders?
Yeah.
And in this case, it was just a real care for their tenant. Where one story was, I know the owner was when as soon as a tenant was late on a payment, boom, she would call them, and it wasn't like, "Where's the payment?" It was, "What's going on in your life? You just missed your payment, and if you miss my payment, I bet you missed some others.
Yeah.
So I'm coming over tomorrow. We're gonna have breakfast. I want to know what's going on in your life." Right. And they could say no, but it was like, but that's care for a tenant, right? That they appreciate it. And they had very successful and very low turnover on their properties because the tenants felt cared for.
Mm-hmm.
And especially the young people today, they don't get a lot. Right.
Yeah.
So here's some, and again, did they want paid? Yeah, they had a business. They wanted to get paid, but it was a holistic view of that. They didn't just view them as tenant, they viewed them as a person, and how can we come alongside?
Yeah.
Right, because they're starting to struggle, and let's nip it in the bud before they start digging themselves a deep hole.
Yeah.
I just thought that was a great story.
Love that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes that's all it takes is showing that extra little bit of care and making sure that you stand out as a different kind of landlord or service provider, as the case may be. Well, that's a great example. I love that. Just to close the loop on the asset allocation piece. So you're at like 10%, maybe in the high impact, low return. What's the other in terms of the high return piece? Are you
I'm
probably 40-40?
I'm probably 20% now, and it used to be 0%.
Yeah.
I didn't know of anything.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
And again, I still need to measure them and say a year or two from now, are they still doing what I expect them? And do I see the impact to really be positive?
Sure. Always
But that was the intent. And those are some new funds that have started. Move some money there. So about 20% there and still over 50%.
Down in high return.
Yeah. And then of course, then I have maybe 10% in more advanced high spec tech investments and a lot of crypto things. So I can't help myself.
Yeah.
It's been on tear lately. A rough year up until, rough 2 years up until about a month ago. And now it's on a tear.
Yeah.
We'll see how long this.
Yeah. Nice. That's great. Awesome. Well, we're getting towards the end of our time here. I'm going to jump into the lightning round. So, couple questions. Yeah, I feel like I got a sense of understanding the kind of work you do. I'd like to get to know you personally a little bit. What would you say is your biggest win? It could be personal, professional. Take it wherever you want.
All right. Obviously, me and my wife Elizabeth, biggest win. Everybody says that, and it's true for everybody.
Yeah. But I know
I'll
your
give you
wife.
something
It's
different.
definitely true
See,
for you.
definitely. Absolutely. But a recent win was I did the half Ironman up at Happy Valley last summer. And my other brother from LA flew in for it. And my daughter came up from DC, and the three of us competed for the Daigle Cup.
Nice.
And at age 61, yours truly won it.
No way.
Yeah. We were neck and neck, the three of us, in a 6-hour race. We finished within 5 or 10 minutes of each other.
You're kidding. And is this biking, swimming, running?
Yeah. I start swim, bike, run. My daughter is getting so darn fast. We had such a big lead on her bike. She has one of my old bikes.
Yeah.
She just
you rigged it.
She went out and got herself a new bike. So I think we're all toast next year. I think she's going to beat us.
Oh, yeah.
But I'm gonna hold her to the cup for the
Good
next
for
year.
you.
So
You deserve it.
that's a nice
61.
win.
Good for you. You should be proud of it. How about a favorite movie?
Favorite movie? I'll date myself by saying Chariots of Fire.
Oh,
Right?
nice.
Great
Yeah,
movie.
You're a runner.
I'm
so-
a runner, right?
yeah.
I love it. More modern one probably be Infinity War, right? From
Okay.
Marvel.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right. Good
Yeah.
stuff. How about a favorite food?
Favorite food? I'm a Yinzer, right? From Western Pennsylvania with a
Please
twist.
don't say a permane sandwich.
No. Even worse. I'd say rigatoni and meatballs.
Oh, nice.
But I lived in Chicago and Little Italy in Chicago. Oh my goodness. I had the best pasta dish here. So I try to replicate that with like vodka cream sauce and just some good homemade pasta and
Sounds
meatballs.
amazing. Do you make that at home?
I dabble in it.
Every now and then.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
What's a way in which you're trying to grow personally or professionally right now?
One way is just, I talked about technology. I am trying to stay up on it. Kathy Wood from ARK Investments, has some great resources out there. She puts everything out there, which some people may like or not like Kathy. That's fine. But she makes everything she has available, which I think is awesome.
Nice. Yeah.
Right. So I listen to her podcasts and then look on the website and read a lot of things. So that's where I get a lot of the crypto advice and what's going on in crypto, just trying to understand it technically.
Yeah.
And I get it from a currency standpoint, but I'm also looking at blockchain from a technology standpoint, because I'm more of a technologist. So to see what are the use cases there and are they getting good enough to really warrant a stronger investment?
And what do you think about that question?
I still haven't answered it. Like, I think they're getting there on use cases. The best talent is moving that direction.
Yeah.
Right? It really is. So it's like, really got my attention.
Okay.
But it's still a little over my head.
Yeah, me too. And yet I'm invested in it as well.
Yeah.
So what do I know? What's some really good content you're taking in these days that you're using to, learn more about the work you do?
Well, I think the one I'd recommend would be Faith Driven Investor.
Yeah.
Right. So
the podcast?
Yeah, the podcast.
Yeah.
They've got a great podcast, Faith Driven Entrepreneur as well. From an impact investing standpoint, Faith Driven Investor would be a great one.
Yeah, they're doing a great job over there. All right. And if folks want to connect with you, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
Best way to do it is probably with the network. So we use a technology product called Mighty Networks for our Pittsburgh group. And the website to join would be faithdrivenpgh.com.
faithdrivenpgh.com.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Tim, this has been great. I appreciate our friendship and appreciate you coming on the show. It's good to learn a little bit about the work you're doing. And also I loved digging into the asset allocation piece. It's funny when you mentioned the quadrant, I was just thinking like, that's how a consultant would think, right? A 2x2. Consultants love a good 2x2. So it's fun watching what you've done in the consulting world and how you apply that to the work that you're doing in the faith-driven investing space. So thanks for being on the show. Thanks so much to all of our listeners for listening in.
Yeah, thank you. And I don't think I took Dan's permanent position with the joke.
The joke was pretty good. You might be my new co-host.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of the Real Returns Podcast. We hope that you learned something new about how you can invest to make a lasting impact on those around you. Please be sure to subscribe to our show wherever you listen to your podcasts, leave us a review, and share about us on social media. We hope you will join us for our next episode, where we will be continuing the conversation around impactful real estate investing.